Hello and welcome to Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. On today's show, we chat with one of New Jersey's most prolific figures, Senator Bill Bradley. In addition to being a three-term U.S. Senator representing the Garden State, he is a two-time NBA World Champion with the New York Knicks. He's here now to talk about his life then and now, which includes his performative autobiography, Rolling Along, An American Story, that's currently available on Max. He joins us now. Bill, it's such an honor having you on Your New Jersey today.
Well, it's great to be with you, Lisa Marie, on Your New Jersey.
Well, you define what it means to live, work, and be successful in the Garden State, so I'm so excited to dive in. You obviously have dominated sports, politics, and now you are taking over the entertainment world with your performative autobiography, Rolling Along, An American Story. I'm so interested in learning why you've embarked on this deeply personal journey.
Well, I decided to do this. The why is because I thought if I shared my story with great candor, that it would encourage other people to share their story. And in the process, we'd see our common humanity. It's about love of the country, love of the game of basketball. It's about forgiveness, perseverance, triumph, loss, sadness, joy. In other words, it's about life. And that's what my hope was, and that's why I did it.
How did the idea of a performative autobiography come to be?
I gave my papers, my political papers, to Princeton. They did an oral history, interviewed about 50 people. I invited them all to a reception to thank them. At the reception, I stood up and told stories about each one of them. Afterwards, one of the people who were there, was a guy who produced 72 plays on Broadway, came up to me and said, "This reminds me a little bit of Hal Holbrook doing Mark Twain. You ought to work something up." And that's the first time it occurred to me. So I spent another year writing it and another year workshopping it in 20 cities across the country. And the result is rolling along.
What was your writing process like?
Once I began to do something, I do it fully. And I wrote every day. I revised constantly. And it's much different than writing a book because the elements of a film are so much more complicated. When you write a book, you sit down, you have a piece of paper, you write, right? Then you revise and revise and revise. Here, particularly if it's a performative autobiography, you not only write, but then you have to perform, which, is old hat for you. You do it every day in your job. But, if you're going to stand up before an audience and tell them about your life, you have to commit it to memory. And so I would walk around Central Park memorizing it. And then after I got it memorized, I do it every day at 3:30 in the rec room of our apartment building in New York. And that's the way it happened.
Bill, this is reminding me of another performative autobiography by a prominent New Jerseyan, Bruce Springsteen. I'm sure you know him. I saw his show on Broadway and it was beyond phenomenal. Did you draw inspiration from people like Bruce?
Well, certainly I saw the Bruce show and was inspired by it. Billy Crystal did a piece, so it was a one-man show. There were a couple of others, but none quite as autobiographical as this is. And there were angels that appeared along the way that helped me out. For example, when I did it on my 20-city tour, one of the stops was the commissary at Warner Brothers lot in L.A. And afterwards, a guy came up named Mike Tolan, who did The Last Dance about Michael Jordan, and said, this could be a film. And then one day I ran into my old buddy Spike Lee at Walt Fraser's restaurant. Said, "Hey, Spike, I'd like to do this for you." He said, "Well, come on over to my office in Brooklyn." So I went over in Brooklyn. He said, "What do you need?" And I said, "How about a glass of water and a stool?" And I did it for him. At the end, he had tears in his eyes. I knew something I'd gotten something done there. And then when I'd rehearse it every day at 3:30, we got around, and sometimes people came, and one of whom was a guy named Frank Oz, who did all the Muppets and all Jim Henson movies. He said, "I want to help you." And my last angel, my buddy Steve Van Zandt of the E Street Band, who had seen a version of this 6 months earlier. And I said, "Steve, I need some music to begin." And he said, "Well, Bruce wrote a song in the early 80s called Summer at Signal Hill. Maybe that works." So I got it. It did work. It's now the opening of the film. and came from my angel, Steve Van Zandt. So everywhere along the road, people helped out to make this become a reality.
You got some big time angels there. That is so cool to hear the backstory of how that all came together and that everyone really wanted to help out of the goodness of their heart, it sounds like.
Well, I think that they wanted to help in part because they were moved by what I said, some because of friendship, some because they saw an opportunity to have something said in a way that was not done very often. And that's why I call it the performative autobiography. In other words, it's not an actor doing another life. It's the person who has lived the life presenting the piece. And that's what this was. And I had a great time doing it. There are great analogies between basketball and memorizing this piece. I mean, you got to do it every day, every day, every day. And so I internalized it, and I had a lot of fun doing it when we ultimately, after COVID, because, after I did all the cities, I was going to do it on stage in many places. And then COVID hit. That allowed me to go deeper. At the end of COVID, I said, well, I'm not going to go around the theaters to do this, so I better rent a theater and film it, and I'll make it into a film. And that's what I did.
I love that you drew such parallels between the performative autobiography and basketball. However, you're not putting your innermost thoughts and feelings out on the court as you're doing here. How did it feel being so vulnerable in front of an audience?
Well, I made the decision that that's what I was going to do. And this is not material that I hadn't thought about or written for my own purposes in my diaries about. And so I decided to do it. And I actually found it was wonderful as I began to feel comfortable expressing my feelings about different elements of the show. And I think expressing the feelings was one of the key to connect with people. And in some cases, it touches their lives because they've had somewhat similar experiences. So it's much more a human journey than it is a hero journey.
Were you nervous performing in front of audiences in such a big way?
Well, I enjoyed doing it. I remember sitting in the room the night I did it at the theater, and I analogized that I was in the locker room, about to go out and play a game I loved. I'm about to go out and share a story that I love because I wrote it and I memorized it and I feel it. And so I'm going to say it. And I'm going to give it to the people in the theater, and on the film, I'm going to give it to the people who watch it on Max. And what I wanted this to do is to underline our common humanity in a world that is increasingly divided in our country, which I lament. This was an attempt to create some healing. And then what my grandmother used to say, never look down on people you don't understand.
Why do you think there is such a political divide now?
Technical reasons, money in politics, social media, partisan media. So I look at this and I say, it's unfortunate because, for example, when Cory Booker went to the Senate to represent New Jersey, he asked me what he should do. And I said, make 5 Republican friends, real friends, because they'll find a way to help you. And indeed, he went around and visited individual senators who were Republican. And one of them was a guy named Inhofe, who was a senator, a very conservative senator from Oklahoma. And in the course of the talk, he realized Inhofe had 2 adopted kids. So when Cory put in a bill on foster care, he called Inhofe and asked him would he co-sponsor. And Inhofe said, of course I will, and I'll be glad to get some Republican help. And he did. And now the law is the law of the land. When you legislate seriously, you have to understand the people and understand who they are. And partisan labels are important on one level. On another level, the human level is the one that allows you to reach people at the deepest part.
That advice you gave is amazing and should be given to every politician, no matter the stature and level.
I think that they've lost sight of our common humanity in some cases. And it's that common humanity that unites us. And that's much deeper level than R&D. I mean, when I was growing up, I always thought that with humility and hard work, you can achieve excellence. And if you achieve excellence, that's how you take care of your family. And if enough of us achieve excellence, our country moves forward. And I still think that's true. And we just have to get beyond our moment. It is so visceral and so, I don't know. I mean, it's sad in many ways because I see people who are Republican, they're human beings. I mean, when I went to the Senate for the first time, the first senator to come to my office and welcome me to the Senate was a Republican, Jack Danforth from Missouri. And so I believe that that's still there. And Corey's experience is an example of it being still there. And so we have to play to our better angels and not our worse angels. So make an effort. I mean, when I was a senator, for example, one of the things I did to try to understand my colleagues was go on what I called American journeys, right? Go to their states, 2 days with a wheat farmer in North Dakota, 2 days in Cajun country in Louisiana, a day at the Mexican border at El Paso, a Ohio steel plant. And in the process of that, I felt I got to know the country and I got to know the places that my colleagues were representing. And that meant that it was easier to seek compromise because I understood where they were living as a human being. I mean, it's much different to live in the arid West than it is to live in New Jersey. There's no Atlantic Ocean in Utah. You need to be able to do that to get a full picture of who they are as human beings.
Bill, I hope every politician on the planet is listening to this interview right now and following your notes for success. Although I have to imagine that traveling the country like that wasn't easy.
And I remember after about one term, I became the chairman of the Water and Power Subcommittee on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, which meant that I had jurisdiction over federal water in 20 Western states, all of whom needed it. That gave me a total different view of what life was like and living in those places, how fundamental water was. We don't even think about it in New Jersey or even where I grew up in Missouri. It's just there. But in the West, you have to think about it. That shapes your life in many ways. So I always thought that I wanted to learn the country and I wanted to know the country like I once knew the seams of a basketball. And that meant experiencing it.
Growing up, you lived and breathed basketball. That's why you got so successful in the sports world. When did you get bit, though, by the political bug?
Well, I think it was an evolution. When I was a kid, when I was a young man, I remember being in the Senate chamber as an intern from Princeton the night the 1964 Civil Rights Act passed. And I thought to myself, something significant has happened here. Maybe someday I can be here, meeting in the Senate, and help make things happen. I mean, there was a time in America, for example, when the elderly didn't have health care or pension, when the Great Lakes were industrial sewers, when, women and African Americans didn't have a right to vote, when corporations did whatever they wanted to their employees and to their customers. But political leadership changed those things. And that's the kind of work I wanted to do. And then over time, as I became a basketball player and I played years, my interest in the game lessened at precisely the time that my interest in politics was increasing. So it was a kind of natural evolution for me.
Today in the sports world, and I'm a big sports fan, a lot of the athletes are more outspoken now about their political views. When you played, that wasn't the case as much. What are your thoughts on notable athletes putting themselves out there in that big way?
Well, I think why should we say athletes shouldn't be citizens too? I mean, what does a citizen do? A citizen has points of view about what's going on in the country, which means they have to be informed. I think it's a good thing. I want lawyers to express what they think. I want doctors. I want basketball players. I want football players. I want business people. We should all be citizens. I mean, democracy is a hard thing. It's a hard work you have to do as a citizen, to be informed, to vote, to make sure other people vote that you know, to have a voice. That's the way we have our voice in this country, and I think it should be open to anyone.
With your film, is that what you want viewers to take away?
Well, I think people are going to hopefully see their lives in the course of this film. And they'll draw their own conclusions about, what it's like to raise a daughter, or what it's like to have a death of a parent, or what it's like, any of the number of other things that I talk about in the film. And I hope that they're just reminded of their humanity.
Have you received, I'm sure you have, a lot of feedback on the film, and has it been a certain demographic, a certain audience, or has the viewer spanned all generations?
Well, Max, which is where this is now since February 1st, they don't give you any numbers for 3 months. So I don't know how many people have watched it. I do know, however, that, say, Spike Lee put out a Instagram post, and it got 350,000 views and 40,000 likes in 2 days. So I do know there's someone out there listening to this and someone watching it. I did a thing the other day, just in a kind of odd audience of about 200 people, and about 100 of them had seen it. So I don't know. I just put it out there, and I hope I'll get some numbers at some point. But my feedback, of course, and the people who don't watch don't give me any feedback, right? So I have a distorted audience, but they tell me, when they watch it, they tell me what they think.
I'm sure a ton of people have watched it, especially The Last Dance you mentioned earlier. That really set the table for a lot of these types of films and documentaries to come out. I know Spike Lee was involved with The Captain, the Derek Jeter mini documentary series, which was so awesome.
Sure.
As well. And I know they're doing something on Kobe Bryant, which I'm still so sad about. I'm sure you are too. Such a terrible story. But probably a lot of people saw it. But unfortunately, that is the state of streaming and television. It's hard to get those numbers. Believe me, I know. I get asked the same question every day with this show and other ventures. But it is cool, though, that you have that platform and can get your story out very easy via streaming all over the world.
Well, I feel very lucky, and I'm grateful to Max for putting it on. And I hope people will watch it. And I hope they'll watch it not only with an open mind, but I hope they watch it thinking of themselves and their lives. And if they do, I think they'll find that there's, I say, more in common than different from our mutual experience.
You mentioned how the film goes into raising children, losing a parent, obviously the sports side, the political side, the humanities side. What story was the most emotional and difficult for you to share?
Probably the death of my parents. That was probably the most difficult for me to share. We all have parents who are going to pass, and therefore it's a common experience. But for the individual who's sharing it, that's a very deep experience.
And what was the most triumphant to share?
Standing at center court with your fist raised in the air, knowing you're the best in the world as the world champion with the New York Knicks. I mean, that was the biggest thrill. Of course, the greatest honor was being elected 3 times from New Jersey, and the people having enough trust in me to give me that opportunity to serve. So that's the biggest honor. NBA championship's the biggest thrill.
Hey, the Knicks, they're trying to get back there, man. They haven't been able to since.
Yeah, somebody said it's been 50 years since the Knicks won a championship. So hope springs eternal. Once a Knick, always a Knick. Maybe they'll do it this year. Who knows?
Are you still very involved with the organization? Do you go back and do alumni nights and all of that?
I'm not involved with the organization in any kind of official capacity, but I do go to 4 or 5 games a year, maybe 6. And if they get into playoffs, I'll try to go to a game. Once a Knick, always a Knick. I mean, my old buddy Walt Frazier, my teammate, he's swishing and dishing as as the broadcast color person on the radio. And it's interesting because CBS Sunday Morning did a piece on me, and Jane Pauley said, "We want to take you to the garden." And I thought, oh, what a cliche. But they didn't take me to the floor of the garden. They took me up to the roof of the garden opposite my banner, number 24, that hangs. Of course, the interview, I became very emotional because I realized that that garden was the place where I first felt at home. It was a kind of a home. I not only, won a championship there in 1970, but I also gave the keynote to the Democratic National Convention there. It also was the site of my most successful presidential fundraiser. So the place itself resonated with me in a very deep personal way, and experiencing those feelings in that moment is one of the things I thought that made it a special presentation.
Do you get that same feeling when you visit your favorite spots around the Garden State?
I certainly get that feeling when I walk the Jersey Shore, or when I, go along the Delaware River in the West. And I even get that feeling sometimes when I'm driving the turnpike. I'm in thousands of times doing it. And yet each of those roads is a memory in a very fundamental way.
You have led such a big, amazing life. What's next for you?
I don't know. I mean, I enjoy what I do now. I work for an investment firm and find young companies. I think I have a company that's developed a way to solve diabetes, which will be a wonderful thing if that happens. I have a radio show on Sirius XM called American Voices, which I've had for 17 years. I've done over 1,400 interviews, 480 shows, and they're interviews with people about their lives. It's called American Voices. Like the guy that shined shoes at the Pittsburgh Children's Hospital for 46 years. And out of every tip that he got, he put a portion of it into a fund to pay for poor kids' health care. And the day I interviewed him, he put over $46,000 in that fund. So I'm going to continue to do my radio show. I'm going to continue to try to find young companies that can make a difference in the world. And then we'll see what happens next. I don't know. Maybe I'll do something about my favorite music. I don't know. I did a Substack with a number of things: how to watch a basketball game, and 10 musical memories. I'll tell you one of the musical memories if you want to know, Lisa Marie.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I'm a kid growing up in Missouri, and one of the things I do is watch American Bandstand, right? And I listen to music. And so my parents, when I'm a sophomore in high school, decide I need to go to a prep school in Pennsylvania. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to stay in Missouri and play basketball. They say, well, I say, well, okay, I'll go take a look at it. But since it's in Pennsylvania, I want to go to American Bandstand. So I go to Philadelphia. I'm on American Bandstand. I get into the actual set. And I see Patty Molitieri, my heartthrob of watching it all these years, sitting on the bleachers. So I go over to Patty and I say, Patty, would you like to dance? And she says in a deep Philadelphia accent, no, you're too tall. That was a moment that I will never forget.
You have a ton of moments. You know what I hope for you? Besides continued health, success, and everything great in life? Leading the New York Knicks down Broadway for a ticker tape parade. That, I hope, is in your future.
Well, I don't think I'd be leading it. The team should be leading it, but I'd be hanging around the back.
Let's hope. Well, Bill, thank you so much. This was so fascinating to have you on here today. Where can people learn more about you, the film, and follow what you are doing?
Well, they can go to Max, which has the film on it. If they want to see the film, they can go to my website, billbradley.com, which has amplification. I've done some things on Substack, but it's the kind of demand that never ceases. So I don't know if I can't do quite as many as I used to. And then on social media. And, I just feel very fortunate for a lot of things, one of which is to have had the opportunity for 18 years to represent the state of New Jersey in the U.S. Senate. I mean, New Jersey's home, and the shore walk that I did every year from Cape May up to all the way up to the north to the end was really something that I look forward to every year. And people would rush up to me. They'd be full of questions and complaints. And that's what the job was, being there for people.
We thank you for your service for our great state, and we are so happy to have you on here today. Bill, this was an honor.
Thanks so much, Lisa Marie.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. We'll see you back here next week.